theyeshiva.net.
I know yesterday I went a little longer from the designated time, because I got caught up in the shmuas. But whoever had to leave, it's kedai if you could listen to the recording to the end of the shir yesterday, the last 20 or 30 minutes, because this mimer is a very complicated mimer. It's a very deep, complex ideas. And we tried to apply it and show the ramifications of basically the three dimensions that he was discussing. So if you have a chance, it would be kedai just to have a better grasp of the mimer, both for the past and for what we're going to continue. The nekuda that was established here is that the Arizal teaches that there are three universes, or three really paradigms of consciousness, is really a more accurate translation. Whenever you see the word oilamus, it's will always be translated as worlds. It really doesn't really capture it, because we see a world, another world. Where are these worlds? It's really three paradigms of consciousness, which means three worlds, three universes, three dimensions to reality is really a better way of looking at it. It's really three types of glasses, three different prescriptions. I put up glasses and I see reality like this. I put on another pair of glasses, I see reality like this, and I put on a third pair of glasses and I see reality like this. Why that's so important is because you're dealing really with the same reality from different perspectives, different vantage points, and each are allowed by Hashem. In other words, each one has legitimacy, each one has significance, which in itself is a very important idea, because this is the key to arbitration. People who are arbitrators, meaning you have to mediate between two parties that are having a conflict. It's very, very important to be able to understand that the same reality is seen by two people, three people, from completely three different perspectives. Simply because they're wearing different glasses. And if you can always try to understand the other before you need them to understand you, it will probably be more effective. We usually don't work that way. Instinctively, it's like, this is how it has to be. If you could seek to understand the other person's view before you need them to understand you, nothing will happen. You'll be able to explain your view. It's not like you're going to lose your life, your future, your destiny. I mean, unless you're dealing with a real lemon, you have to be careful anyway. But generally speaking, that's the ability that there's three worlds. The same world is three worlds. The same tissue box is not a tissue box. Depends how you're looking at it, from which perspective you're looking at it. Depends if you have a microscope. Depends on the tools, depends on your glasses. One person could see one thing, another person could see another. So b'meila, when we speak about realities, it's just a general yisoid, a general hakdam, and all these types of ideas. It's called spiritual thinking. Spiritual thinking is never either or. Spiritual thinking is not either or. Capitalistic thinking is either or. Business-like thinking is either or. Spiritual thinking is everything has its place. Everything has its energy. You have to be able to expand the horizon. It's usually not either or. So the Eitz Chaim, the Arizal, addresses three universes, right? Three paradigms of consciousness: Akudim, Nekudim, and Brudim. And the way the Maimer, Torah Or, the Alter Rebbe, the Baal HaTanya explains it is from the Eitz Chaim, but with an explanation that in Akudim the 10 lights of spheres are bound up in one vessel. In other words, they're expressed through one medium. And in Nekudim, they diverge into 10 distinct points. Nekudas, Akudim from the word bound up, Nekudim from the word Nekudas, and Brudim, they're also existing in 10 distinct points. In other words, the 10 lights have 10 vessels, not one vessel, but nonetheless, there's an element of integration which he will soon discuss. Now, when a person reads this at the surface, the first doesn't make sense at all. You tell me that there's 10 lights and they're bound up in one vessel. But if it's one vessel, so what makes them 10 lights? So Itaka says they're not really 10, they're like one. But he still calls them 10. And they're 10 that are bound up in one vessel. So they're 10 or they're not 10. It's one kli. In the second one, Nekudim and Brudim, there's 10 lights and 10 vessels. 10 spheres, which are a marriage of lights and vessels. But in the first one, it's one kli, but it's all akud b'kli echad. So the subtle distinction that he's making here is that this is called Esses Spheres Hagnuzis, the 10 spheres that are gonus, that are concealed. And this is where he makes peace, he reconciles, or creates a connection between the Arizal's teachings and the teaching of the Zohar, about the distinction between the spheres, where they have a name and an identity, and therefore you could call them 10, versus a state of reality which is called 1, Antu Chad, beloved Chushban, even though there's 10 over there, but they're not 10. You don't say Hashem has 10 elements, it's all 1, it's Akad B'Kli Echad. Even though there's 10, Antu Chakim, Antu Mevin, it's all there. But it's La B'Chachma Yedi, La B'Vini Yedi, it's not Yodua, it's not identified. Why? Because the Arizal helps us understand and give us the mechanism or the oisius, the words, that it's Akudim B'Kli Echad. And what is the point? How do we understand this? The point is in the word Eses Spheres HaGnuzas, 10 spheres that are concealed. As I said, when we say it physically, something is hidden somewhere, the thing that you hide in a particular place is not intrinsically connected with the place that you hide it in. I hide something in the drawer, the thing that I put into the drawer is not connected with the drawer, because that's how physicality works. There's no inherent relationship. It's generally a world of superficiality. In Ruchnius, when you say Gnuzos, it's symbolic. This is hidden there. What do you mean it's hidden there? Because it belongs there. It's part of it. So why is it hidden? Hidden means because you don't see it. Why don't you see it? Why don't you see it? Because it's completely an expression of its core, of its source. So therefore it does not have a distinct identity. And that is the difference between Eser Oiris Akudim B'Kli Echad or Eser Oiris that are expressed in 10 Kalim. And what is the difference? What is the distinction? So the Nekudas Hadavar, and I'm saying this in oisies that are a little more abstract, but it's important to get that before it's applicable, because if you start with the application before you start with the principle, you miss the mahus of it, even though the principles that are more abstract are usually less compelling to people, because we like to hear the applications, but I'm identifying the process here of understanding it. And that is that whenever you talk about something, whenever you talk about the spheres, you could talk about it from the perspective of Akudim and the perspective of Nekudim. When you speak about it from the perspective of Nekudim, the uptaich, the definition of Chesed is Chesed. Definition of Gevura is Gevura. Definition of Netzach is Netzach. Definition of Bina, whatever the definition is. And that's what a Keli means. Keli is, this is how it's expressed. This is what it is. It's articulated. Keli means the ability to articulate something. That's what a Keli always means in Kabbalah. Keli is the ability to articulate something. Concrete, bring it out, express it, whatever articulation means. There's articulation verbally, there's articulation in a business model, but you articulate it. You bring it out, becomes a reality. What's Chachma? Chachma is Chachma. What's Chesed? Chesed is Chesed. When you say the 10 lights have one Keli, so what does it mean? They're articulated as one thing, but it's 10. That's the Vart. That's the richness of the paradox. How can Chachma and Chesed have one how could they be articulated as one? They're not. If Chesed is Chesed, it's not Gvura. Because in the world of Akudim, what's the definition of a Sphira? An expression of Ein Sof. Since Hashem is Ein Sof means it's infinite. So infinity includes every possibility, including finite expressions. Infinity includes the capacity for wisdom, the capacity for kindness, the capacity for victory, the capacity for empathy, the capacity for leadership, the capacity for truth, the capacity for sensitivity, the capacity for analysis, the capacity for perception. I'm using the English words for the spheres, if you realize. It includes many more capacities, but it includes 10 capacities. So when I look at Chesed, what do I see? In the world of Akudim, I don't see Chesed. I see Ein Sof. When I look at Gvura, I don't see Gvura. I see a Hechitimtza of the Ein Sof expressing itself. So the Chesed and Gvura, are they two or one? Both. They're two, but really they're one. There's no conflict of identity, because what is the definition of their identity? Not them. Definition of their identity is a medium, a Hechitimtza, to express the Ein Sof. Here the Ein Sof expresses itself through Chachma, here it expresses itself through Malchus, here it expresses itself through Gvura, here it expresses itself through Netzach. It's a whole different model where the 10 are 10, completely 10, but they're really one. That's what it means. Akudim b'kli echad. That's how he explains. Akudim b'kli echad means it's very straight. It's bound up in one vessel. So generally, people who read Kisvei Harizal, this was really the Baal HaTanya's major contribution. So there's a lot of graphics, there's a lot of code language, a lot of symbolisms. But what does it mean? What's the neshama of the Vart? What's the neshama? What's the essence of the Vart? The essence of the Vart, he explains, what that Arizal is trying to say is that it's all there, but you can't compare it to the way it's in the Kudim. In the Kudim, the uptight of Chesed is Chesed. In Akudim, the uptight of Chesed is Ein Sof. And to get from one to the other, it's Yesh Me'ayin. It's not really Yesh Me'ayin, it's the same thing. But the perception is so radically different because the birth of identity happens in the Kudim, not in Akudim. In Akudim, you don't have the birth of individual identity. It's still complete oneness. Even though you have all identity, nothing missing. But all identity is what? Is a heichi timtze, it's a din, it's a halacha, it's a chelik, it's a chalois in the Ein Sof. It's a vart in the Ein Sof, it's an uptouch in the Ein Sof. It's not possible for a person to get there. Every person is there. It's a state of reality. It's a state of reality.
No, you don't know. Your mind doesn't know where it is.
It's not even that. It's more distinct.
Yeah. Uba b'meyimai, saf kol saf, there's two metzias. But there's deeper than Uba b'meyimai. There's the Uber when it's still in the Mayach Ha'av, in the brain of the father. The brain of the father. To give an example, it's not my example actually, it's an example that's given by the Rashab. The Rebbe Rashab was a grandson of the Tzemach Tzedek, who was a grandson of the Baal HaTanya. He was the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, so he has he's known as the Rambam of Chassidus because of his approach. So he has a famous series, I don't know, famous, it's a very deep series called Hemshech Tafrei Shayim Beis, a series of a few hundred discourses that he started to say Shavuos 1912 for the next 4 years. 1912, 13, 14, 15, for the next few years. It's called Hemshech Tafrei Shayim Beis, because it started Shavuos Tafrei Shayim Beis. Over there he gives a very interesting mashal to explain the disparity. I'm going to say the mashal that he gives in my own words, but the mashal is from the Rebbe Rashab. They're called Rashab, his name was Reb Shalom Dovber. So he gives a very interesting mashal. I'm going to first say it how he says it and then just apply it a little bit. He says a real teacher doesn't give information, data. A real teacher paints a picture. A picture has a lot of details, but it's one picture. But many students never get the picture. All they hear is the details. That's what he says. When you see a piece of art, what are you seeing? You're not seeing 100 paintings. Oh, wow, look at the house. Oh, look at the sun. Look at the bush. Look at the person. No, that's not a painting is cohesive. It's one. It's integrated. Does it have hundreds, thousands, maybe millions of nuances of details? Of course. That's what great art is. But it's a piece of art. It's one piece of art. You're going to go to the Mona Lisa and say, I think she looks better in glasses. Let's put on glasses. Yeah. It's a Reform Judaism. Let's put on glasses on the Mona Lisa. We have to adjust it. You don't play with art. Right? You don't add a new stanza to Beethoven's Ninth. You don't want to sing it, don't sing it. But don't start manipulating. It's a cohesive shtickle. You're not in the mood of it, don't be in the mood of it. You don't have to sing it. It's a mistake when you start crippling art. It's cohesive. But some people don't have that ability. They look at something, all they could see is a detail, another detail, another detail. Yeah. I once was in Virginia for a Shabbaton, and Sunday afternoon I had to give a shiur. It was a Yachik Kala. There was a snow a few years ago in Virginia. It was 30 feet. So there were two other speakers, Rabbi Breidowitz and Nat Lewin, Dr. Nat Lewin, the lawyer. They both couldn't come. So I had to fill in for all three speakers, for myself and for the other two. So a speech that was supposed to be an hour ended up being a little longer. Even when, okay. So we spoke. It was on something, actually about the tzimtzum, what the tzimtzum is in Kabbalah. So in the beginning, I said a joke, just, to engage the crowd. Milsa de B'nechisa. I spoke for a very long time. I'm not going to tell you how long, so you shouldn't get afraid. You shouldn't be afraid. So at the end, somebody comes over to me. I'll never forget. And he says, the opening joke was brilliant. I finished 3.5 hours. He says, the opening joke was brilliant. I'm going to use it. I learned from it, and so on and so forth. So he meant to compliment me. You understand? He meant to compliment me. People hear things, but do you hear the whole picture? That's a different art.
The head.
Huh?
The ear in the head.
In the Kudim, in Akudim, there's no Chachma and Chesed. There's a picture of Ein Sof. It's expressed in 10 details, but the details are not details. The details are part of the Ein Sof. In the Kudim, you start taking yourself seriously. What do I mean seriously? You pluck the rose out of its source. So now the rose is beautiful, but it's not anymore part of the context of all of reality. Now, as we explained, the ramifications in political systems are socialism versus capitalism, right? In socialism, what's the modus operandi? There's no yachid, there's only a tzibur, there's only a klal, there's only the big picture. You really don't exist. What I mean you don't exist, I don't mean you don't exist. You don't exist means you don't have independent ownership, independent rights. Capitalism is the opposite. It's all about you. Now, even capitalism, you have to pay taxes. That right? There's what's called the social contract. There's the rights you give up to the state to protect you, or at least supposed to protect you, to clean up the snow, to fix up Forshay roads, etc. So everyone understands that there has to be a negotiation between the Yachid and the Tzibur. But what's the dominant force? The dominant force in a democracy generally, and a capitalistic system, is the Yachid. I. Especially today's generation, right? What do they say? That everything today is about I. The technology too. You have the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad. It all begins with I.
They even have a game called Wii, spelled with 2 I's.
Very good. Very good. So when you have that metzius, over here the focus is very much the individual, or the focus is on the tzibur. This is just a ramification, how it trickles down into that havana, that havchana between eser oir lahavdil, eser oiris akudim b'kli echad or nekudim. And the transition from one to the other requires a tremendous restriction, a tremendous tzimtzum. There's a word from the Baal HaTanya, v'chol ha'am royim es hakoilos, by Matan Torah. The nation saw the sounds. What does it mean you see sounds? How do you see sounds? You don't see sounds. Chazal say, mechilter b'kiva royin es hanishma, shaymin es hanira. What does it mean? You see what is heard. So he says something absolutely fascinating. The difference of seeing and hearing is, seeing is from klal to prat. Hearing is from prat to klal. When you see something, you always see first the klal. You see the house. You see the picture. Right? You see the event. You see the mansion. Whatever it is. You see the zoo. You see the mountain. You see nature. Then you analyze the details. You start looking. Wow. How did they build this house? What is this kitchen comprised of? What is this picture made up of? You start examining the nuances, but you start with the klal. You see the whole thing, and then you go to the prat. Listening is the other way around. If I'm telling you a story, I can only share detail by detail by detail by detail, and at the end you go, I got it. Sometimes you don't, but you go from prat to klal. At the end, you get the whole picture. How is Judaism usually experienced and taught? Seeing or hearing, right? In Gemara, the expression is always ta, shma. In Zohar, the expression is ta, chazi. Why? The Baal HaTanya says, because Nigla is based on Shmiya. You're learning a sugya in Gemara, Shnayim Oichzim Betalis, Beitza Shanel de Beyomtiv, Shoy Shanel de Chesapora, Meimus HaKarden Shma Ba'arvin, L'Shem Shisha Dvorim Azevach Nizbach, Sukkah Shigvoy L'Mayla Mesra Mama. It's detailed, and that's how education works. Detail by detail by detail by detail. After you hear the whole story, then maybe, there's a picture. By Matan Torah, v'chol royim es hakolos. They saw the kolos. In other words, they didn't see a detail. In every detail, they saw the whole picture. They saw every detail as an expression of the full picture. Full picture. So sometimes all of Judaism that people experience is only pratim, only shmiyah. There's never sight. There's never vision. You don't see any full picture. You could know billions of details. You may know Ohr Chaim Shul, you know it. You may know it well with Tosfos, with Rashi, with Marsha. All's good, but it's sometimes only pratim, only pratim. And then to go from the prat to the klal, it's difficult to see the full picture. In many ways, on an abstract level, that's the difference of akudim and nakudim. In Nekudim, each sphere is a sphere. In Akudim, each sphere is not a sphere. That's why the 10 are one. Each sphere is the Ein Sof being expressed through the sphere. Therefore, it's 10, but it's really Akudim b'kliyach. There's only one kli. It's articulated as one ma'alach, as one mahus, as one Akudim. Okay, so now let's go weiter. He says, it's parentheses. The line starts chuli, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 lines from the top. But you must understand the depth of the tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means restriction and descent, to get from the paradigm of akudim to the paradigm of nekudim. Even though it's the same, it's 10 spheres. Why? 2 things. Kimilvad ze sheba akudim ve'eses sfiris agnuzes hoyu be'ilu rav yois acha nikra chakim v'la b'chachmi yediyah k'niskalel. In addition to the fact that the spheres in akudim, called eses sfiris agnuzes, the 10, the way they're concealed. Again, what does concealed mean? It doesn't mean a hiding place. Concealed means it's embedded in its source and you don't see it. When something is hidden, you don't see it. Why? Because, of course, you see it. But the uptaich is not it. It's expressing its source. That's what it is. So it's called gnuzas. Over there, it's in a much higher state. It's called chakim v'la b'chachma yediyah. It's not the type of chachma that we could even identify. That's number one. Each one is on a different space. Harei oidzois, but it's even more than this. Ki hasam over there, kivan shekulam b'kli echad. Since they're all in one vessel, meaning they have one articulation, ve'ein bem shum ischalkus, there's no divisiveness between them. Im kein thus, b'ham shachas b'chinas chachma al derech mashal. When chachma is accessed, that yesh b'zeh kol ha'eses fidus agnuzas yachad. V'loi b'chinas chachma b'fnei atzmai. Chachma comes, it's a package deal. You don't only have chachma, it's not isolated. Kiven the hasam ein chachma pifchina b'fnei atzma klal levada. Chachma is not independent. Ki im kol ha'eses fidus agnuzas im davar echad mamish. All the 10 are one. And still they're 10. Im kein eich shayach leimen am shachas chachma b'fnei atzma. How can you even speak about chachma being communicated independently? Ki im am shachas davar hanikre eses fidus agnuzas chuli yachad. What's communicated is a reality that ultimately combines all the 10. Mashekim b'chinas eses spheres the nekudim. In nekudim, it's 10 lights and 10 vessels. This tzamtzen, it's restricted. The energy is restricted. Therefore, liyas chachman imshachas b'chinas echad levada, b'china achas levada mamish v'chein chesed. Each one is isolated. It has its own keli. It has its own articulation. V'harei muva. And you understand this is no small difference. She'ein areich klal b'chinas chachma k'shi b'fnei atzma. He's writing it almost like he writes his Shulchan Aruch, you see. V'arei movin she'ein areich klal b'chinas chachma k'shi b'fnei atzma l'b'china ha'koileles kol ha'eses fidus yachad mamash. There's no erech, there's no comparison to chachma on its own, to chachma the way it's integrated literally with all the 10. U'kemoi she'ein areich ois achas hanifredes metevas l'mishpech oiseichem al derech mashal l'gabei ha'teva kula k'sha'oyu kol ha'oisias yachad. You have a word lemishpech hoisechem. It's made up of Lamed, Mem, Shin, right? Fei, Ches, Vav, Salf, Yud, Chaf, Mem. How many letters was that? Very good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You understand why he chose this word? He chose it for another reason. What's the other reason?
Mishpachas Klal Yisrael being Oged B'Yachad.
Right? Parshas Noach. He said it Parshas Noach. And it's 10 letters. L'mishpachai seichem. But there's also a third reason he chose it. I'll tell you in a moment. L'mishpachai seichem. So, what it means to your families. Where did you get that translation? From which letter? From Lamed? From Mem? From Shin? From which letter did you get it? The answer is you got it from all the letters. If you'll take out the Shin, you're not going to have it. If you take out the Ches, you're not going to have it. If you take out the Shlos Mem, you're not going to have your families. You'll have family, not your family. So which letter makes it up? The answer is the letters together make it up. What happens if I pluck out the Lamed, the Mem? I have it, but do I have it? How much of the Mishpachai Seichem do you have in an isolated Mem? I'm asking you. L'choyre, you should tell me 10%, right? But do you have 10%?
Zero.
You have 0%. So it's an interesting mashal that he's giving. You understand? L'choyre, every letter should give you 10%. I have $100. I split it into 10. So you get $10. I have l'mishpachai seichem. I split it into 10. You should get 10% of the idea. You get none of the idea. That's how deep the tzimtzum is from akudim to nekudim. Here you have a lamed, and here you have l'mishpachai seichem. And it's two experiences of life. It's different experiences of life. It's two types of marriages. It's two types of relationships. It's a whole different experience. Here, the individuality, the mem is not busy fighting with the shin. Why? Because the gedder of the mem and the gedder of the shin, se'ein vort. Like we say in Yiddish, se'ein vort. I don't mean no vort only as a word. Ein vort means it's one nekudah. It's one metzias. It's a vort l'mishpachai seichem. In akudim. Yeah, a few lines you'll see. It's also one level down. There's another reason I think why he uses the word l'mishpachai seichem, and that is because it actually explains family dynamics. That's, I think, the real reason he uses this word. This explains family dynamics. Because every family really goes through this process of akudim, nekudim, and berudim. Really, every individual goes through this process. His first mashal for akudim was the soul and the body. In other words, this all exists in the human psyche. There's a level of soul where everything is one. Then there's the marriage of the soul and the body, and everything becomes distinct. But really, you have it also in larger organisms, not just my own and your own. What we call superorganisms. And one of the great organisms of society is the mishpacha, the family. The family is a very interesting reality. We're separate, and yet we're so one. So there's a space where all the children really were not distinct people, right? Remember, where do they come from? They come from the same DNA of the father, the same DNA of the mother. If you look at them from that perspective, what do you see? You could look at 10 children, but you see mamish one. You see it's the father, it's the mother, and sometimes the parents experience it that way. You could think you're 49 years old, but from your mother's perspective, you're 2 years old. So she would give you a bubble bath if you came home tonight. And tell you to eat. You're not eating. Here, let me give you some cakes. Let me give you some honey cookies.
But personalities are different. So.
But if you only remain in that space and you say, "Oh, we're just one," when we do the same thing, right? What happens? There's a frustration. Yeah. One of the biggest issues of siblings is you don't respect me as a separate person, right? People have with older brothers, with sisters, with fathers. You don't respect me. I am forever the baby working for you in the company. I always have to live off the honey and the milk flowing from your talents. This is a lot of cause of frustration. You don't respect me. You don't give me my space. Either you detach yourself from me because you can't deal with respecting me, or you control me. But there's nothing in the middle. So you have your akudim, nekudim. Nekudim is teenage rebellion. Akudim is childhood. In childhood, when you're mamash an infant, you don't even distinguish diversity. In childhood development, there's a state after your birth, you don't even know the difference between you and I, right? There's no you and I. That comes later. But when you're a child, you're still dependent. Then at some point, usually it used to happen when you were 17, now it's happening when you're 5. You're like, because 5-year-olds are already teenagers, it's like, I am my own man. I am my own man. So what are you doing? You take the lamed, you take the mem, you take the shin, lemishpachai seichem. It's not a mishpach anymore. Not a mishpach anymore. Thanksgiving is coming up in America. Thanksgiving dinners is always a center of drama. Who's coming? Who's not coming? Is he going to be there? Is she going to be there? Is the cranberry sauce going to be? Oh, you are okay. But that concept of the mishpacha, really, they're one. There's a point where they're one. They were all babies and they were all rooted in a source. But then you become manifested into individuals. The question is, can you reach the third state? And the third state is tikkun versus toyu, which is brudim versus nekudim. But the tzimtzum, to get from akudim to nekudim, is dramatic. Because the difference between cohesiveness and separateness, that's his mashal, is not just you get 10%. You don't get anything of it. In other words, in the sphere, that's why it's called yesh me'ayin. You can't recognize the sphere in nekudim, and you can't see it traced back to the sphere in akudim, even though it comes from there. Because the metamorphosis is so powerful. Now, of course, the metaphor is inaccurate because when I have a lamed, what am I supposed to do with the lamed? But the truth is, it is accurate because there's a lot to do with a lamed. A lamed has a personality. A lamed is very interesting. A lamed has a shape. A lamed has a gematria. Lamed has meaning. Comes from the word lamed, to teach. Mem has meaning. Shin has meaning. It has a personality. But the mishpacha is nishtal. The mishpachai seichem is lost. That's completely lost. Even though it's really there. Why? Because when I bring back the letters, it's all there. And then, oh, this was the lamed. Ah, it's a different lamed. What's the uptight of lamed? In the kudim, it's lamed. In the kudim, it's lim mishpechai seichem. Makes up a word. It's a different uptight, like the piece of art. You could focus on the detail, and you say, it's part of an art. There's a famous story read about 5 blind people who were given an elephant to touch. You know the story, right? And everybody touched the elephant, and everyone came with a different conclusion. This one touched the leg of the elephant, and he said, this is a tree. This is the trunk of a tree. Right? And this one touched the tusk, and he says it's a pipe. And this one touched the side of the elephant, he said it's a wall. It's a fortress. And then somebody who wasn't blind says, it's an elephant. They weren't wrong. They weren't wrong. They were just experiencing it from their perception. From their perception, it was really that. They just didn't get the full picture, which includes all the details. That's the key difference between akudim and nekudim. And he says, ein aroich ois achas an ifred mit teves lumishbechai seichem al derech moshel legabi ateva kulik shoyu kol ois yisyacha. Milvad ma shebchines achachma zug shehi b'fnei atzma nikra chachma yediyah ma sheiken achachma des esfiris da kudim nikra chakim b'lo b'chachma yediyah. In addition, this is talking about the unity. Besides the fact, and they're connected of course, that here the chachma is called yediyah, here it's called not yediyah, lo b'chachma yediyah. וגם על זה שייך אנטו חד ולוי בחושבון, כיוון שאין שם חינס אסחלקוס אסספידס קנה. And there you could say it's still one because there's no division. Now we come to your question. ומכל מקום, אויר אין סויף ברוך הוא עצמוי, הוא למילה מילה מבחינס הקודם. The oir itself is beyond akudim, ki gam akudim nikra odom debriya legabe ein sof baruch. He's not meirich in this right now. But in other words, akudim is already some level of articulation of the 10 spheres, because you say there's a kli. Even though it's one message, it's the way the Ein Sof is expressed. Because beyond this, we're not even dealing with expression. We're not dealing with expression. This is already expression. Next paragraph. Vihine. We come now to the next step. In the world of nekudim, in contrast to the world of akudim, there was the breaking of the vessels. Shviras hakelim. This is an acronym, a Rosh Tevis. The smashing, the shattering of the vessels. Shezeu inyan olam hatoyu. This is the concept discussed in Kisvei Ha'arizal at length, known as olam hatoyu. Any, even most basic student of any of the terminology of Teres HaNister will immediately dabble with the terms olam hatoyu versus olam hatikun, shviras hakelim, olam hanikudim, olam ha'akudim, olam habrudim, and so forth. But here, he's out not just to, quote the terms, but to give the havana of them, to understand the soul of what's being conveyed. Obviously, it's all symbolic language, always. Breaking vessels, it's all symbolic ideas, conceptual concepts that are conveyed through graphic images. In Olam Akudim, we learned that the 10 lights of the spheroids were akud, bound up, completely unified in one keli, in one vessel. Nikudim is already the emergence of the 10 spheres from a state of transcendent consciousness to the point that there's no distinctiveness even between the 10. It's one cohesive word. Now they emerge into 10 lights contained by 10 vessels, which means really that there's 10 ways to articulate the spheres, because there are 10 different spheres, so you need 10 ways to articulate them. You have 10 kelim. And what it means on a conceptual level, this was our discussion in the previous shiurim, is it's not just you went from 1 to 10. It's not an issue of quantity. You added another 9. That's not the vart. It's a different creature. Antu chad v'lo b'chushbon, antu chakim v'lo b'chachma yediyah, antu mevin v'lo b'vina yediyah, to chesed, gvura, tiferes, netzach, chayd with Hashem yediyah. And what that means conceptually here, as we explained, I'm not going to get into that whole discussion, just to remind you, that in Akudim, there's no 10 spheres. There's Ein Sof. It's the Ein Sof being expressed in so many different ways. But what's felt in the consciousness of the sphere is, I'm expressing the Ein Sof.
We don't even call it a sphere yet.
We don't call it a sphere, right? We call it Esa spheres hagnuzas, hidden. And in spirituality, hidden means it's hidden. Physically hidden means it's there, it's just hidden. I cover the cup, you don't see it. In spiritual terms, it doesn't work that way. Relationships are based on inherent properties, not circumstantial properties. You put it here, it's hidden. Gnuzas means it's essentially hidden, meaning it's not seen. You can't see it because there's nothing to see, because its definition is not one that represents its own identity. Its definition is what? Ahechitimtza, for the gilui, for the expression of the Ein Sof. And therefore Chachma and Chesed are really one, even though they're so different. Because what's nirgush, what's felt, is not the Chachma, it's not the Chesed. What's felt is the Ein Sof being expressed. But as a result of a tremendous tzimtzum, a tremendous restriction, and as he said earlier in the parentheses, it comes to quite many tzimtzumim and restrictions. He called it tzimtzum adam kadman, tzimtzum hadikna, various tzimtzumim, which is also a major term in Teres HaNister. There is now the next stage called Olam HaNikudim, where the 10 spheres emerge as 10 entities. Divine, we're talking about divine entities, divine energies.
It's not really a next stage or a next level. It could be the same.
Yes, when I say whenever you say next, in Chassidus it's never time. Never. Next means...
Alternate.
Huh?
Alternate.
No, conceptually it follows it. But they both always remain. They exist
It's
simultaneously.
still a level before you get born and after you get born.
Some of it in our psyche is expressed in time. That's true. But it still exists. The level that's there before you're born is there also after you're born. You just may have a harder time accessing it. It's always there.
And Bruden will also be in the
There's an expression, in Ruchnius is nishtakin avar. In Ruchnius is nishtakin avar. Sometimes in Shrama is oich nishtakin avar. It's not past, it's right now. I'm just giving a metaphor, but that hopefully we can heal from. In real Ruchnius, there's no avar. It's not defined by time, it's present. If you touch Ruchnius, it's not avar. It never...
Question?
Yeah.
You said before that every, in that
Right.
month of just
Right.
nefesh,
Yeah. We may access it in different times mitzvah ourselves, but it's not operating in limited to the inyan of Zman. So an example for this would be, we say, for example, it's very simple, 1 plus 1 equals 2, right? And therefore 2 minus 1 equals 1. What came first, what came second? If you can't establish that 1 plus 1 equals 2, so you don't know what 2 is, first you have to say 2 is 1 plus 1. Now you could say, if you take 1 away from 2, you're left with 1. So the second statement follows the first statement, but does it follow it in time? Was there ever a time that 1 plus 1 equaled 2, but 2 minus 1 did not equal 1? No. They were always together. So why do I say one after the other? Because in concept, you can only appreciate number 2 after number 1. So we say the word after, but after doesn't mean 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. Klar?
Is that why you use the concept of 10? Is that represents
Yeah, that's in the Paradis at length. Why 10 dafka? Okay, that's a whole separate sugya. Could have been spheres Ein Kates also. Ein Sof could express itself in Lepoil, the building blocks of our world are 10. And that's why 10 is the Misper Hashalim. The Even Ezra says 10 is the complete number. And generally 10, Basarim Amoris Nivra Ha'olam, Hashem decided it should be 10. If he wanted 11, there could have been 11. Seir Sadibris, etc. Eser Makas.
When you get to this differentiation in the Kudim, you still haven't reached Olam Atzilus yet?
No.
It's only going to be in Brudim.
Yes.
We're still above the Atzilus.
Still
Yes.
didn't explain what Brudum is.
Right, no, not at all. In the Kudim, there was a crisis. The crisis is Shviras HaKelim, breaking of the vessels. And this is called Olam HaTanya. Why? V'hainu lefi shahoyu rak b'bchinas nekudus kol achas b'china b'fnei atzma. The reason is because the problem was, I shouldn't say the problem, because the reality was that it was Nekudim. Nekudim comes from the word Nekudus, points. In other words, each one self-contained. And because each one is self-contained, therefore, ultimately the vessels break. And this is what gives it the name Olam HaToyu, which Toyu actually means chaos or confusion. V'ha'aretz hoisa soyu v'voyu v'choshech ha'pnei sa'im v'ruach elikim Mirachefes Apnei Hamayim, Haaretz Hoisa Soyu, and Kisvei Harizal is defined as the experience of Toy. The truth of the way he says in Medrash Rabbah in Bereshis that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Hayaboina Olamus Umachrivan. He built worlds and he destroyed them. This is the Bchina of Olam HaToyu, where there was Shviras HaKelim. And here again, we're not talking about a one-time experience. We're talking about a perpetual concept and reality of Nekudim and its consequences. Now, what does this mean? That because Nekudim, each one was Kol Achas B'china B'fnei Atzma, Shviras HaKelim. What it means is that in this state of Nekudim, here is where conflict arises. And the reason conflict arises is because the you and the I are not one anymore in Nekudim. Why are the you and the I not one anymore? Because we lost that wholesome cohesiveness that existed in the world of Akudim. In the world of Akudim, Chachma, Chesed, Bina, Gvura, Tiferes are completely one. That's why they're in one Kli. Why are they one? Because they are one. They have different identities. The different identities is only in the way of expression, but it's not in its core. Because the uptouch of Chachma and Akudim, the uptouch of Bina, of Chesed and Akudim is what? The Ein Sof. Because that's its uptouch, that's its identity. So therefore you and I are really one. You're expressing truth through your personality. I'm expressing truth through my personality. You're expressing the infinite light in one way, and I'm expressing the infinite light in another way. So your light only enhances my light, and my light only enhances your light. Speak about it in human psychological terms. Your success is my success. And my success prompts your success. That's a different type of perspective. There's no concept of competition in a negative sense. Competitiveness where if you win, I lose. If you're number one, there are authors who check every day, every week, the bestseller list of books. And as long as you're number 2, right, you're praying that number 1 has his mapala next week, so you can get number 1. Because there can only be one number 1. The whole Olympic model is there's one winner to the race. There's one winner to the race. Chanukah and Purim in Kabbalah are Netzach and Hoid. Every Yom Tov is a Sphira. Chanukah and Purim are Netzach. Chanukah is Netzach. Why is Chanukah Netzach? Because the Greeks were all about victory. And they were brilliant. They were about victory. They created the concept of victory. Chanukah is also about Netzach. But Chanukah is the Netzach from the world of Akudim. Netzach in the world of Akudim is opposite that type of Netzach, the Greek type of Netzach. There's a Netzach where if you win, I lose. For me to win, you have to lose. We can't both win. How could we win? There's one person on the top. That's a person who's compartmentalized. And therefore, my success is your downfall. Your downfall is my success.
So is that the Kudim, the Greek model?
One nakud of it. We're dealing with a very divine world, but everything trickles down into the lowest spaces.
Stay stuck in it.
Of course, always. There are husbands that if their wife succeeds too much, they get jealous. And there are wives that if their husband succeeds too much, they can't deal with it. If you have any success outside of my own orbit, I can't deal with it. Because somehow it threatens me, it competes with me. So the Akudim is really the infinite broadness of understanding. Nobody could take away your light. Why could nobody take away your light? Because it's really an infinite light. It's an Ein Sof light. And the way it's expressed through Chachma is not expressed through Chesed. So in Akudim it's felt, so to speak, in the most abstract, transcendent way. But the way we articulate it, if we're speaking in words of Kalim, that's the model of Akudim. Now, Nekudim is a very opposite definition. Hashem wanted identity. That's why he made Nekudim. Reality could have stopped by Akudim. If Akudim would be the end of Ishtalshalus, the end of the evolutionary process, the world would have looked a certain way. We would not see each other as separate people. Everything would be min b'min, and there would be no boider. This is very important. There would be no boider. It's oichel echad and it's 1 min. It's not 2 minutes. We're so different. We're not different. We're not different. We look different, and we don't even look different. You might think you look different. Right? So a speaker once said, he said, I don't speak long, it just seems that way. Okay. It seems that way. We're not really different. And that's also what it means when you say it's beyond Zman, beyond Makam. Haya hoy v'yiyah. What does it mean? Was, is, will be, or space, Mizrach, Ma'irav, Darim, Tzafin, it's all connected, it's all integrated. So you have in modern physics, there's words for it, but there's also another concept, and that is that the differences, the nuances of reality, even though they may be very different, they're really one, because they're each ultimately expressing a oneness that is manifested through different mediums, and it could be manifested in infinite other mediums, and it's still all the same Ein Sof. In Avodas Hashem, we say in Keil Adon on Shabbos about the sun, the galaxies, the sun, the moon, Meleim Ziv, Umefikim Noi, Gana Zivim B'chol Ha'olam. They're filled with radiance, they emit light, their radiance fills the world, it's beautiful. And then we say, Smeichim b'tzeisum v'sasim b'voyam. They are happy when they go out, meaning when the sun comes out in the morning, v'sasim b'voyam, and they rejoice when they return, so to speak, when they set, from our perspective. And here you have a paradox. Do you love going to work or do you love coming home? If you love one, it's very hard to love the other. If you love leaving the house, for whatever reason, you don't love coming home. And if you hate leaving the house, right? So usually you don't love leaving the house. Smeichim, so then, one of the two. Smeichim b'tzeisum v'sasim b'voyim. The answer is oisim be'ema ritzoyin koinam. They both feel that their duty in life is to do ritzoyin koinam. So if the ratzon of my koinam, of my creator, is I should go out, I go out. If the ratzon is now come back in, it's going in because it's the same thing. Because if my eye is just a conduit to fulfill ritzoyin koinam, so tseisam and vayam is simply a technical difference. Now you want me in this tzir, now you want me in this tzir. Now you want me here, now you want me here. But it's the same nekuda. Smeichim b'tzeisam. Why? Because what's felt is ritzoyin koinam. So if there's a conflict, So then it's a question. Seisam is geschmack, boyum is not geschmack. I like my job, I don't like my job. If it's the Nakud of Ritzayin Kainam, so then the very I is not caught up in the details of Smeichim and Seisam and Sasam Bavayim. And the same is true in many other areas, but that's the Mus. In Nikudim, that drastically changes. In Nikudim, each Sphira, which ultimately will become the source of identity in the world, it's the building blocks of the universe, each one has a separate Vort. In other words, it has a separate keli. It has a separate distinct vessel, container. It articulates itself in a particular way. It's called a Nakuda. I am my Nakuda, and you are your Nakuda. But remember that they're still infinite. And therefore, there's a clash of civilizations. There's a clash of priorities. So what happens? Shviras HaKelim. Literally a head-and-head collision. Because if I'm infinite and you're infinite, and the definition of our I is what? Not expression of a larger infinity. But the definition of my I is I. The definition of your I is you. So we're not one anymore. So now when we meet, there's a Shviras HaKelim, there's a breaking of the vessels.
So ultimately it's a clash between finitude and infinity, really.
Yeah.
You're using something finite, but
Yeah.
clean, to try to express
Yeah.
something infinite.
Yeah.
So it also means that he lost all the 10 spheres. He could have like one only.
He didn't lose, it got broken. All brokenness comes from this space.
How about only one? He keeps one. Like he's about chesed.
So to have a wholesomeness in that.
Yeah, we'll soon see about the tikkun hakli, what happens with the tikkun. But the Shviras HaKelim is the concept that there was a breakdown. And the reason there was a breakdown is because the extremism of individuality, and it's real individuality, it's not mitigated individuality, it's not compromised individuality, it's not diluted individuality, it's infinite individuality. So what happens here is, ultimately, there can't be coexistence. The clash is too intense, and all of the vessels break. And what happens when the vessels break is, the vessels have light. So there's light of Toyu everywhere in broken vessels. So wherever you look, in brokenness, there's a lot of light. A lot of light, because the Kalim have oil, but they're broken, they're fragmented.
The oil always remains connected to the Keli.
Part of it, there's the element of the oil that departs from Shviras HaKelim, but there's the element of the oil that can't depart from Shviras HaKelim. The Keli captured it, the Keli contains it, but it's fragmented. And what does fragmentation mean? Fragmentation means there's no cohesiveness anymore. So therefore, you can't even identify the depth of the spark. The depth of the spark. That's what we learned in other Maimarim about the secret of food, why a person is dependent on food. Because really, Toyu is higher than Tikkun. It just went through a terrible trauma. All the source of all trauma and brokenness in our world, essentially, spiritually, is rooted in the Shviras HaKelim of Toyu, where the I ultimately was broken. Because there's no recognition anymore of the oneness of humanity and even the oneness of you as a reflection of the Ein Sof.
So the person that comes through
It's comprised of all 10.
That's Brudim.
That's only like...
In the Kudim not. That was the issue of Shviras HaKelim. What happens in Brudim is something fascinating. What happens in Brudim is finiteness is introduced. So it's a tremendous compromise legabe the infinite splendor of Akudim and even Nikudim. Because each sphere is also, it's 10, but finite. And because more finite, so therefore, I respect my boundaries. Because I have boundaries. And therefore, I understand that you also have boundaries. And it's a give and take. I need you, and you need me. And therefore, the passion is far less intense, because it's not infinite anymore. But there can be what's called what we call cooperation, which is a combination of two words. Cooperation. We operate as co's, or what we call interdependence. Interdependence is not independent. There's dependence, where you're just dependent on somebody. There's codependence, okay, that's another parsha. You have independence, I don't need you. And then you have interdependence. Interdependence is a blessing. Interdependence means the ability, the awareness that ultimately I have something you don't have, but you have something that I'll never have. And therefore I need you and you need me, and we have to complement each other. And it's never mutually exclusive. So there's an element of deep individuality there, but there's also an element of understanding the boundaries of individuality, and therefore the need to give and the need to take. So the reason that Brudim could operate in that fashion is because the intensity, the infinity that existed in the Kudim, which is really much closer to Akudim, in terms of power, in terms of potency, because Nekudim speaks the truth that God is Ein Sof, but it corrupts the truth in the sense that it applied the Ein Sof to the individual ego. In Brudim, that is lost. That is lost in order to protect it from Shviras HaKelim. You don't have that extremism, that intensity, that infinity that Toyu has, that Nekudim has. That's the third step, which is Olam HaBrudim, which means the world of integration. Ayn Rand. Right?
What's the part about Ayn Rand?
Ich darf keinem nicht.
No, I remember
No, it's a vart. It's a vart. It's a way. It's a concept. It's a mahalach. Everyone is responding to the crisis of humanity, to the pain of humanity. How best to build a society? It's very complicated. Building societies, building families, building communities. What gives, what takes. That's why you have here the two radical models that we addressed is the model of socialism versus the model of capitalism. And in its extremes, I'm not talking not in its extremes, it represents, I'm going to say the word lahavdil because I'm not going to compare Leibel Bronstein, also known as Leon Trotsky, Mamash Ta'olam HaKudim, and certainly not the Russia Marusha Stalin. But I'm explaining how things trickle down to consciousness. Because they weren't about Olam HaKudim. He was a paranoid monster. But the philosophy that justified his monstrous actions was based on what? On the concept that if you want peace in the world, take away ownership. Don't allow individuality to reign supreme. See the world as a tzibur. See the world as really one cohesive tzibur where there's no distinctiveness. There's a beautiful, brilliant word from the Rogatchover Gon and Halacha. In Masechta Brachas, there's a machlekes between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbi Akiva about Rabbi Yossi, about Birchas HaZimun. What do we do by Birchas HaZimun? So 3 you say Nevarech, 10 you say Nevarech Elokeinu, and then Rabbi Yossi Aglili goes up and up. You have 100 the Nusach changes, 1,000 the Nusach changes, and 10,000 people eating a Suda, the Nusach changes. It always changes. The halacha is, no. The halacha is that it doesn't. Once you hit 10, you say Elokeinu, even if you have 10,000 Jews eating together. What's this for us, Machlekes? So the Rogatchover explains, and he shows that in the whole Shas they argue about this. If a tzibur is basically a herkiv of Yechidim, it's basically 9 Yechidim plus 1, and whenever you have 10 people, it's powerful. 1 person is powerful, 2 is more, 9 is more, and 10 is like a critical mass that creates tremendous power. It's like, a company that has 10 people.
Quantum jump.
Huh?
A quantum jump.
A jump. 20, therefore, is more. And 1,000 is more. And when you have a company of 10,000 people, a lot more is going on. When you have 10,000 Jews screaming, Nevarech Elokeinu Shechalnu Mishaloi, there's a bigger Hamshacha of Kedusha. You have to say more. It's more going on. But Shabbat says the other shit, and that's the halacha, is that when you hit 9, 10, you reach a transcendental point of oneness. The 9 people now merge into one transcendent mitzias of cohesiveness. You add another 10,000, you didn't add anything. You added 10,000 people, but the nekuda of tzibur, of oneness, it's a whole new identity that was created. It's not 10 people. A minyan is not 10 people. A minyan is a neshama klolis. Because 10 Jews are 10 spheres, because every Jew is an underwelt, so if you could bring 10 Jews in one room without screaming at each other, noch te daven, right? So what you created was, you went back to Olam HaKudim. You went back, so there, add another 1,000 spheres. You added numbers. You didn't add to the oneness, you can't add. It's a different vart. That's the quantum leap. That's why I was hesitant with your expression. So you understand, it's a whole different mahalach. Because it's not pratim anymore. It's a klal. You can't add to the klal. You can add more pratim, but they all merge into the same klal, and that klal was there. L'mayla masar tvach. You have to say different. Tzemach Tzedek. Rishus hayachid oila ad l'rakia. Rishus harabim is til asara. Why? Because Rishus harabim is a world of multiplicity, and once you hit a certain height, there's no multiplicity anymore. Rishus hayachid is oila ad l'rakia. And halacha, Rishus hayachid is oila ad l'rakia. That's the word. I didn't hear the word. Tzibur. Tzibur means a community, a minyan.
Tzibur is one.
Tzibur, yeah.
And so.
This is a big thing by him. These two mahalchim. He says that he writes a lashon pligi b'chol Torah kula. The whole Torah they argue about this. The whole Torah. If there's a metzias where yechidim lose their identity and they become something else, they become a transcendent reality. That's the koyach of a minyan. And therefore, the Gemara brings there Baruch Hashem Amvayrach. Everyone says Baruch Hashem Amvayrach. Even if there's 10,000 Jews, you don't change the nusach, right? By benching, it's an argument. Because davening, you're connecting to something in heaven and beyond. Eating, you're eating. The question is, if in eating you can experience that same oneness, which has to do with
thanking the Muslim for yourself. So it's
right, and for eating. So by definition, you're dealing with a fragment. The whole idea of tefillah is halah, sublimation. Right. But in eating, it's the other way around. It's about earthiness. Can you connect to that space? Okay. I just want to say we have a minyan. We started to have a minyan here at 7:45. Just you should know. That's when I'm going to stop. We have a minyan here in this room, 7:45. There's a minyan that starts also upstairs in a few minutes, but not upstairs in the tent. Okay. So now, in an extreme fashion, you have one model of society which says we're all one, and therefore, even though we each contribute, as in the kibbutz model, so to speak, the socialist model, ultimately, what is yours is mine. What is mine is yours. You get what you need. I get what I need. Hopefully, if there's distribution that is fair and is honest, but the concept is that you don't own. And then there's the capitalistic ideal, which is what? On the contrary, it's all about the individual. It's all about the I. What is the challenge in each one? And here, we have to understand this in order to appreciate Brudim. The challenge in the Kudim is very clear. It's what free societies in an extreme create. And that is family structures. Structures that demand sacrifice get compromised. It's hard for people to stay married. It's hard for people to have loyalty. It's hard for people to make sacrifices because the definition of capitalism is ich. So if you meet my needs, fine. The moment you don't meet my needs, bye-bye. The whole mahalach hamachshava is one that my individuality reigns supreme. The world of akudim in a political system completely denies that. Not only does it foster loyalty, it doesn't acknowledge that there's anything but loyalty. You don't exist as an independent. Your whole tachlis is to create the tzibur. We all know there's different types of communities. Some communities are built on this model. You don't exist as long as you are part. You are part of this. That is your value. And therefore, the moment you flex your muscles, what are you? What's the word?
Oscar.
Huh?
Oscar.
Okay.
Clicks, we call them clicks.
And there's a reason for it. Now, for a person, there's a reason because it doesn't only foster loyalty, it fosters a certain lifestyle. It's all about commitment, dedication. You're part of something. You're building. You're always here to build somebody else. To bring in families. As a rabbi once told me, my objective as a rabbi in this community is 3 things. I hatch them, I match them, and I dispatch them. And we move on. That's what we do. And as long as it's going, the cycle is going. And you move, next. You marry off, kids, eineklach, you could move on. A new day. Right? And there is something powerful to it. The world of Nekudim is a backlash against this world. No, there's something called I, and it's not about you. It's about me. And when you take that to an extreme, it has its consequences. But what's the challenge of Akudim? The challenge of Akudim is that God didn't want things to stop by akudim. He could have stopped it by akudim. There is something called I. There is something called the individual. It exists. And when you deny that, when you crush that, what are you doing? You're denying a certain truth about existence. So the question is, can akudim and nekudim ever gain shalom bayis? That's the shayla. There's a maila in akudim, there's a gewaldike maila in nekudim. But each one ultimately was not the tachlis of the bria. In nekudim, the chisaron is, the yesh is so extreme that there's a shviras hakelim. But in akudim there's no chisaron. Akudim is akudim. When we're applying nekudim, akudim, to life or to political systems or to building of society and so forth, we couldn't make believe that we're one. We're not.
So there's no chesed.
We're not. We're just not. I got my stuff and you got your stuff. Is it a curse? No. That's the question. Is it a curse? No. A curse you undo. Not a curse. It's part of kavanas habriya.
We don't have real akudim.
Exactly. And when you try to recreate it, there's a truth there. There's a truth there. The truth in akudim is that it speaks to a part of a person that really has a space in which there is a space in which we're one. Lemishbechei seichen. We come from one mother. We come from one womb. We come from one Ein Sof. And therefore, one of the deepest pleasures a person can have in life is. Now, it's hard for somebody who grew up in a stifled community to appreciate this because they always try to run away. But somebody who didn't, one of the greatest pleasures in life is when you feel cosmic oneness. People who engage in mindfulness and other things know there's a description where you feel one with the world. That feeling is exhilarating. Like you lose the burden of having to exist independently. You lose the burden of ego. Sometimes in a symphony, in a musical experience, the music is so powerful and people, they surrender their ego, they melt. Sometimes you have an intimate group of people who are very open with each other, and in that process you don't feel ego anymore. You don't have to protect yourself. Ultimately, like two identities can melt into each other. There's a very powerful moment in that when it comes from a space of enlightenment, not from a space of repression. That's the thrill of oneness. And then there's going back to individuality. And then there's the yearning to go out of individuality, to feel the oneness, which represents akudah. So now we have the third step, where he says, V'achar kach olam habrudim, hu olam atikun, shenasu b'bchinas partsufim. Here they become organisms, structures. There's never any more chachma on its own. And that's why if you ever see pictures in Kabbalistic works, the spheres in Brudim change pictures. In Nekudim, it's point by point by point by point. In Brudim, it's always Chesed on the right, Gvura on the left, Tiferes in the center. It's like a structure of an organism because each one is in a relationship with the other. It's literally like a living organism. You can't isolate your right arm from your left arm, your heart from your brain, your liver from your pancreas, etc. It is a hiskalalus. Chachma should also include the others, but it's not like Hakudim anymore. It's a different type. V'nikra parts of Abba. In Kabbalah, it's called the structure of Abba, the structure of the Father, the Chachma structure. V'chein parts of Zah. Parts of Ze'er Ampin. This is a metaphor for the 6 middas. Sheikari b'chinas ha-middas. Ach kulon hayu klulim yachad. V'gam ha-moichin da-abba v'imma me'irim bem. All the middas are integrated and they even have array of the father and mother. V'areza maili yisedim v'b'chinas nekudim shoyer nakol b'china b'fnei atzma chesed levada gvura levada. This is a gewaldige mile over nekudim because in nekudim everyone was a lone wolf. Aval betikun, or I should say a lone midah. Aval betikun yesh b'chinas iskalalus v'ischabrus. And he comes back to his metaphor. Kamoyal derech mashal chibura oisis shenifredu liyas mitztarfin yachad letevas. Imagine when all the letters went into fragmentation, and now you bring them back together, and what happens? And you have a word that comes out of it. You see suddenly that it's one word. Oh, so now you're going to ask a question. Oh, this is akudim. He says no. That's not anymore akudim. In Akudim, they were all one, to the point that it's one Kli. Mashenkin b'Berudim kol Sfira yesh l'Kli b'fnei atzmai. Berudim is similar to Nekudim in the sense, every Sfira has its own vessel. It's 10, it's not one, it's not like Akudim. Raksha miskalalim mikola esesferes. It's just they appreciate that you need the integration that is given to you from the other Sfira. And that's a different model than Akudim. In Akudim, you didn't have the birth of individuality. You had only oneness. In Berudim, there is individuality with the deep appreciation that from my eye, to really be able to be fully alive, your eye is indispensable to my eye. That's a whole different definition. This is already an integration of cohesiveness with individuality. That's the chiddush that happens in the reality of Berudim. It's called the Olam HaTikun. Umikol Makoim, Al Yidei Hiskala Lazu. Which one is a higher state of consciousness? You might assume Nekudim, because Nekudim is still infinite. In Berudim, you become a finite being, and that's why you create room for somebody else. He says, but the truth is, Al Yidei Hiskala Lazu, through this integration, Meir Behen Ha'orel Yoina Me'ein Sof Baruch. You actually experience the higher light of the Ein Sof. Ki Ohr Ein Sof Baruch Hu, here is a line. Ohr Ein Sof Baruch Hu Meir v'nimshach davke b'makom sheyesh chibur v'hiskalalos. True infinity will only connect in a place where there is synthesis and integration and unity. Kemoila mata, it exists in the physical world. Zachar unekeva baram val yideze vayevarech. Bereshis it says, B'Tselem Elokim Hashem makes Adam and Chava, Zachar Nekeva Baram Vayivarech. So it's not stam two details. He created male and female and he blessed them. No, the only way he could bless them is when male and female became one. Because male and female are the paradigms of contrast. Zachar and Nekeva are contrast. Everything in the world is operated by the male-female contrast of genders. The whole botanic kingdom, the whole tree life, plant life, male, female. Of course, animal kingdom, and of course, human race. Zachar and Nekeva exists already on the highest echelons of existence, male and female. And then it trickles down to the concept of male and female here. And when we say male and female, we're not only talking about male, female. In every person there's male and female, in a male and in a female. But it's the concept. And only when Zachar and Nekeva come together, which demands always compromise, sensitivity, mitigation, negotiations, always. Right? A professor of English once asked his students, what's the difference in the English language between an engagement and a battle? So one of the students said, one is before the wedding, one is after the wedding. Whenever you're engaging the opposite or the one who's different. If you don't compromise, you have shviras hakelim. So there are marriages that look like olam hatayu. It's exactly what they look like. You walk into the kitchen, the kelim break. I mean quite physically, shviras hakelim. The kelim break. The pots break and the pans break. Hopefully not over your head, but they break in the sink. Shviras hakelim. Right? In the world of Berudim, everyone is mitigated. You realize your finiteness. You realize your smallness. You realize there's another vantage point. So therefore you have to create space for it. So l'cha'ira, you're living a much more limited life. In the world of Nekudim, you're a bohemian. You're uninhibited. That's the beauty of it. The chiddush here is that the Ein Sof you can access only in Berudim.
Because it's reminiscent of Akudim.
Because it's reminiscent of Akudim. It's the way Akudim is articulated in a world of individuality. In other words, it's not really mitigation. It looks like mitigation. It's really infinity.
But you have to be more bittul because she's an issue to
Of course.
But
It's the bittul, it's the bittul of Akudim. That's the chiddush. The chiddush is when you, to put it in these words, I think, when you become finite, you can become infinite. If you remain infinite, you will actually remain finite. When you become finite, you can access infinity. Because infinity can only be accessed with chibur and iskalalos. Why? Because this is one of the great messages of this Vayomer. Because the truth of infinity is never defined by one mahalach. So therefore, infinity always integrates. Infinity always unites, because infinity includes everything. Therefore, when I think I'm infinite, by definition, I'm stripping myself from the gift of infinity. When I could really discover my finiteness, and therefore create space for you, then I can access real infinity. Because infinity rests, infinity is accessed in the space that we create for each other. Where did the Shekhinah rest? In the space between the Kruvim. Mi bein shnei hakruvim, the male and the female. The space that one Kruv makes for the other Kruv, that's where the Ein Sof comes in. Because how is Ein Sof accessed in a world of fragmentation, in a world of particularities, in a world of parochialism, in a world of I? How is Ein Sof accessed? We can't operate on the Ein Sof. How is it accessed on a conscious level? So some of us strip ourselves once in a while from ego, and you become one with that space. And marriages also have that. But how do you operate on a daily level on that space? Only one way. By finiteness, acknowledging its limits. Essentially what that is, it's not a compromise of self. It's an elevation of self to the self of Akudim. And in the self of Akudim, you and I are really one. Zachar nekeva baram vayivarech. And that's what he says here. Let's finish this line. Kamay betziruf asara. I gave the mashal of a minion not coincidentally. Kamay betziruf asara oimnim davar shebikdusha. Da kol be asara shchin tesharya. Ma sheikinim elu hayu elu asara kolachet b'fnei atzma. This is something we take for granted. 10 Jews come together. Nakdishach v'naritzach. Baruch hu es Hashem anvayrech. We do it so often it just becomes a boring experience. But understand what happens. If you say yourself, Baruch Hashem Amvarich, it's a bracha levatala. You say Kaddish on your own, it's a bracha levatala. You say Amen Yesh Mirabba, Birchas Atari, Baruch Hashem Amvarich, it's a bracha, you're saying Hashem's name levatala. It's an issur. 10 Jews come together, suddenly you say it. What is it? What happens is that there's an energy of the divine, of infinity, that can dwell when 10 people came together. You send one of them out of the shul, you can't have it anymore. Now you can have 9 Moshe Rabbeinus. You can have 9 Moshe Rabbeinus, but you don't have it. And then you have 1 Moshe Rabbeinu and 9 simple peasants, and they could say Baruch Hu. If you have 9 Moshes, you're not allowed to. Sapsapella. But this is the Vart. The Vart is that it's the unity of the 10 people, which represents the 10 spheres, and therefore it's a recreation of Akudim. That's why it's 10. Not 11, it's not 9, it's 10 people. Recreates a representation of each sphere, and they're together in one room. Even if they take it for granted, God is here. And now when I say Baruch Hashem Avodech, it's a serious thing. The Kedusha enters into the space of their psyche, whether consciously or unconsciously, because in Brudim you could once again access the Ein Sof, even though it's in a different way than it's in a Kodesh. 5 lines from the bottom, page 20, the second column. When 10 Jews meet, when 10 Jews come together, Baal HaTanya said, you could say a dover shebekdusha. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Akol be'asora shchin tesharya. Zachar nekeva baram vayideze vayivorech oisam. It's in the spaces that we create for each other. It's in the integration of the individuals, creating synthesis, integration, cooperation, where the infinity, so manifested in the world of Akudim and compromised and broken in the world of Nekudim, emerges. Even though in Brudim there is a finiteness, a lack of intensity, that is, of course, a much lower state in some levels than the world of Brudim. So he continues. V'zehu al yedei shem ma hameir ba'olam ha'tikun. The tikkun, which has his skalalus, which has his chabrus, which is reminiscent of Akudim. It's not like Akudim because there is a lot of individuality. There are 10 vessels, but it's reminiscent in the sense that there is a certain unity. Comes from the name of Memhei, which shines, which is manifest, shines, which is present. It's available in the world of tikkun. Now, he's going to say here a few words about Shem Ma, which is really a whole sugya b'fnei atzma. I'm just going to mention one thing for Pirush HaMilos. Yud Kei Vav Kei is Hashem's name. Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey, which is 26. Yud Hey is 15 and Vav Hey is 11. 15 and 11 is 26. But that's when you have the letters Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey. What when you write them out? You write it out fully. Yud is Yud, Yud Vav Daled. Hey, Hey Aleph. Vav, 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 Vav Aleph, Vav. Hey, Hey Aleph. Do that and you'll find 45. Yud Vav Daled. Hey Aleph, Vav Aleph, Vav. Hey Aleph is 45. This is known as Shem Ma, because it's Yud Kei Vav Kei spelled out. There are another 3 ways of spelling out Yud Kei Vav Kei, because a Hey can be spelled as Hey Aleph, Hey Hey, and Hey Yud. Vav can also be spelled as Vav Aleph Vav, Vav Vav, Vav Yud Vav. As a result of various spellings, there are another 3 names in Kabbalah known as Shem Ban, Shem Sag, and Shem Av. So we have 45, 52, 63, 72. Here we're addressing Shema. Each one represents something. In Olam HaTikun, Shema is associated with Brudim. Shema is rooted in a space that's higher than Nekudim. Kihu Shema the Adam Kadman. Because this is the Shema of Adam Kadman, which captures the general light al derech hanal ba'akudim, similar to akudim, al kain mimenu nimshach hatikun sheyiye nasa hiskalulus bebrudim. So it's the ma that allows there that in brudim there should be a sense of unison and integration. Vahainu, what's the connection to Shema? So in Kabbalah it says Shema is in Olam HaTikun. So now he explains Kedarka. Ki Shema hu b'chines bitul miloshen v'nachnu mo. When the Jewish people attack Moshe Rabbeinu in Parshas B'Shalach, Moshe says v'nachnu mo ki salinu aleinu. What are we? V'nachnu like anachnu. What are we? Ki salinu aleinu. What does he mean? Don't look at me and Aaron as dictators, as tyrants who are trying to control your lives. And there's a power struggle here. And the question is, who's going to win? Moshe says, trust me, I'm not in this job because I love to control people. It's completely not who I am. V'nachnu ma, what are we? Ma is ma, right? Chacham ma'u omer. What? It's the question of what. The question of what sounds like a simple question, but it's really the deepest question. It's the question that people stop asking at a certain age. Because you don't have to ask what, you already know everything. So what is really the question that comes from profound humility. I'm not asking you to explain yourself, I'm just saying what. Like, just tell me everything. Let's start over again. I'm ready to reinvent myself. And ma means I'm asking what. What? It's not a specific question. I didn't understand. I have a raya lehepech. That's already inserting my opinions. V'nachnu ma is I'm an open vessel. And that's what Moshe was saying about himself. I'm a conduit. There's no, this is not an ego thing here. I'm a conduit. And because I'm a conduit, I'm an Eved Hashem. This is not about my power at all. So therefore, he could be the most powerful person, but also the most humble person. Because all of his power was not coming because of his own power and the need for it. It was coming because of his selflessness. His power came from his selflessness. His sense of self, it was so powerful because he was so powerless. The most powerful people are the most powerless people. The Gemara says, HaMelech kivin shekara shuv einay zoykef. Gemara in Brachas. Every Jew by Shemina Esra, you say Baruch Atah Hashem once more, and then till the end of Shemina Esra, you're zoykef, you stand straight. At the end of Shemina Esra again, you're koireya. HaMelech, a king, if he's davening in shul, if David HaMelech is davening in shul, well, there was no Shemina Esra then, but if a Melech Yisrael would be davening with the Shemina Esra, Kivan Shekar, the moment he goes Baruch Atah, he stays down the whole Shemina Esra. If you want to whack him over his head, it's a good time. So it's fascinating. You have the king, he's obviously in Mizrach, everyone is straight, and he's down. Psapella. The answer is exactly, because power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Power of a monarch is very dangerous. which is why we cherish democracy. I mean, we'll see what happens on Tuesday. But monarchy is fraught with problems. I mean, we're thankful for democracy, with all of its problems, right? With all of its issues, with all of its failures. Because most kings don't deserve the title. They're either lunatics, monsters. I'm not only talking about Caliglias, I'm talking about even more civil kings, but the power, it gets to you, to a place of insanity. And even if you're a nice person, there's no way that people could be immune to this. So therefore the Melech, he has to be down much more than everybody else. Because that's the only way he's suitable for the position. That's Moshe, v'nachnu ma. Since Tikkun has that ma, the ability to say what, therefore I can create real space for you. I am not busy defending myself or criticizing you. I can actually create space for you without the need to impose, to squash, to crush. That's the ability, the uniqueness of ma. Where is ma rooted in? It's rooted higher than Nekudim. It's rooted even higher than Akudim, what he calls here Shem Ma, the Adam Kadman, which Adam Kadman in a sentence, because it's not, I know you want to know about Adam Kadman. We'll get to it, Be'ezer Hashem, one day. But it has to always be boirer. In a shir, you need a lot of boirer. Was yeah and was nicht. Adam Kadman means primordial man, which basically means an energy that has the blueprint of all of existence. In Adam Kadman, just like an architect makes a blueprint for a house, and a good architect I'm talking about, and every nook and cranny, every detail and nuance in the house you could find in the blueprint. If he's a good architect, there's not a nekuda that's not there. It's not fleshed out in its real size, because it's not a house, it's a blueprint, it's a piece of paper. But in the blueprint you have everything, but you have it in a klal, and then it's fleshed out. So there's a concept known as Adam Kadmon, which is the primordial Adam, which basically is the Adam that is the blueprint for everything that will develop in existence on every level. So that's even precedes Akudim. There's Shema Da'ak, that's what he says. It's similar to Akudim, Al Derech Hanal, it's Ohr HaKlali, calls it Ohr HaKlali, it's the Ohr Klali. That Shema is Meir in Tikkun. Again, we're not getting into the specifics of what what Ak here is, and Shema of Ak. I just wanted to give Pirush HaMilas to the words. All integration, real integration, always comes from a sense of alignment, a sense of surrender to the infinity. And infinity always means that there's more to the picture than my own identity. Since Shema represents bittul, v'nachnu ma, and bittul to the Ein Sof is what allows integration. So that's why in Tikkun you have the integration that you don't have in Toyu, that you don't have in Nekudah. This will now give us understanding to essentially what we began. The beginning of the Vayomer started off with the Der Haflaga. And then he continued to say that the Arizal tells us that Hashem has 7 names. We know in Halach Hashem has 7 names, right? You remember? You have Kael, and you have Elokim, and you have Yud Kei Vav Kei, and you have Tzvakos, and you have Shin Daled Yud, and you have Eke, and you have Adna, Aleph Daled Nun Yud. And they represent the seven spheres. Chesed through Malchus. Kael is Chesed, Elokim is Gvura, Yud Kei Vav Kei is Teferes, Netzach you have Tzvakos, Yisod is Shin Daled Yud, Adna is Malchus, Adon, a leader, Malchus, a master. Comes the Arizal and the Ramak, his Rebbe the Ramak, and said in the beginning, you have to understand something. When we said Kael is Chesed, and Elokim is Gvura, and Havaya is Teferes, it doesn't mean that the 7 names are 7 different, Chas v'Shalom, 7 different realities. It's one God. In other words, the Ohr is the same. The Ohr is the same by all of them. The Ohr of Kael, Elokim, it's always the same. So what's the difference? The difference of the name is just the Keli, the vessel through which the Ohr is identical. The vessel is different. With one exception, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Yud Kei Vav Kei, we say, is Tiferes. But what do you mean Yud Kei Vav Kei is Tiferes? Gvura is also Yud Kei Vav Kei. You just said that the Ohr in all of them is Shem Havaya. The difference is only the Kalim. So Chesed, so when you say Kail, you said Kail is Chesed, right? You said Elikim is Gvura. Yud Kei Vav Kei is Tiferes. But you just told me that all of these names of Hashem, it's one, it's Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's just the Keli is different. So why is Tiferes called Yud Kei Vav Kei? Because in Tiferes, the Keli and the Ohr is the same. The Keli and the Ohr is the same, meaning it's Yud Kei Vav Kei. But let's say Gvura, it's different. The Ohr is Yud Kei Vav Kei, and the Keli is Elikim, right? Malchus, the Ohr is Yud Kei Vav Kei, and the Keli is Adna. In Yud Kei Vav Kei, the two are the same. What does this even mean? What does this mean? Again, this is code riddle language. So generally, a person hears this, it's okay. Why don't you bring on some more such symbols? So the expression is it's secrets. It's secrets. We don't talk about the secrets. But his objective was to try to apply it. So he explains. Now we'll understand what this means. By Tiferes, the Keli is Shem Havaya. Mashenkin bekelim the Chesed Gvura. Why? Ki hine ikera iskalalus anasa boilam atikunu adei kavahim tsoyish ubchines Tiferes midoser shel Yaakov. Although Tikkun has all the 10 spheres, the secret to integration lay always in Tiferes. Beauty, Kavhem Tsoy, the middle column. This is the mid of Yaakov. Shleimu da'avon. Gemara in Psachim. Mitosoy Shleima. Bachur Sheba'avis. The most perfected model of the three Avis. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. Yoishev Oy Holim. The dweller of tents, meaning Shemechaber B'chines Chesed and Gvura. He synthesizes the 2 tenths of Chesed and Gvura. The whole story with the sheep, Akudim, Nekudim, Avrudim, is Yaakov's story. Because what he was doing there with the sheep is he was accessing these 3 universes. Meaning, Yaakov's ability was to access Akudim, even in Brudim. How? Through Tiferes. Shema, there should be integration. Tiferes nikra ois emes bezoya. Reish Parshas Vayikra. Tiferes is called emes, which is the kavem tzoi, which is ma, which is hiskalulus. Why? Chesed and Gvura are natural opponents. Tiferes synthesizes and makes integration. That's why it's emes. V'hinei, we say in davening. Baruch atah Hashem Elokei Avram Elokei Yitzchak Elokei Hakel Hagadol Hagibur VeHanoira. Hagadol is Chesed. Hagibur is Gvura. B'chines Chesed and Gvura. VeHanoira b'chines Tiferes. V'yesh by Toisves Vav. That's why here there's a Vav. Should have been Hagadol VeHagibur VeHanoira, or Hagadol Hagibur Hanoira, because Vav VeHanoira shenimshach hamshach al yoin of Vav always represents a flow of energy from a higher space to a lower space as the form of Vav. Because this access is something that Gadol and Gibber don't access. What is it? Tiferes, Noira, brings in something that's higher. It comes from Akudim, which the Kudim doesn't have, and therefore it creates integration. When Yaakov wakes up, he uses the word ma and uses the word Noira. V'zeu de bekliyat Tiferes u'meir shem Havaya sho ha'oreg doyle v'nalis yosef bekelim the Chesed Gvura. In the vessel of Tiferes you have Havaya, which you don't have in the vessels of Chesed and Gvura. Those vessels you have Elikim, Kail, Tzvakois, Eke. V'hainu kaidei shem Havaya nimshach b'chines ha'iskalulus v'zeu shekosov Havaya echad. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem echad. Where there's Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei, there's always Echad, there's always integration. And therefore, in Tiferes, which represents complete integration, the Keli is also Yud Kei Vav Kei, not only the Ohr. Let me explain a little bit what the Baal HaTanya is teaching us here. And for this, we have to understand what Tiferes is. You want to know what Tiferes is. What's the connection of Noira and Tiferes? L'chayre, you're saying Noira means Yira, right? Yeah. Ma Noira hamakom hazah. So, Tiferes literally comes from the word. What's the word Tiferes? Right? How would you translate in English Tiferes?
Splendor.
Splendor. Huh?
Pe'er.
Pe'er, exactly. Pe'er chavush aroishai. It's glory, it's beauty, it's splendor. The concept of, you'll say this is l'shem u'l'tiferes, right? L'shem, l'tehila, l'tiferes. It's full of beauty. And here we have a very deep meditation, I would say, on what beauty is. What's Tiferes? What's beauty? Tiferes, as we see, has something that none of the other midas have. Even in Tikkun, Tiferes has something that is unique. And that's why in other ones there is a disparity somewhat between the light and the vessel. In Tiferes, we say the light and the vessel are completely one. The vessel is also Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and that's why it's expressed as Tiferes. What is this Yud-Kei Vav-Kei that's being expressed? Hashem Echad, which is really Akudim. Shem Ma, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei is 45, Ma. That comes out in Tikkun, but especially it comes out in Tiferes, and that's why it comes out in Yaakov's life. Yaakov is the great synthesizer. His life has the greatest extremes. He is the man who navigates through all types of extremes and emerges. Yosef takes it even to the next level. Eila told us Yaakov Yosef. Yaakov is Tiferes, Yosef is Yesoid, Kavhem Tzai, all the middle column. In the tree of the spheres, which exists in Brudim, not in Nekudim. In Nekudim there's no tree. In Nekudim it's dots. In Brudim it's an organism, a partzuf. It's like a body. There's give and take. You'll have always Chachma on the right, Bina on the left, Das in the center. Chesed on the right, Gvur on the left, Tiferes in the center. Netzach on the right, Hoyd on the left, Yisoid in the center. Malchus is below it, detached. It's already a different concept. So you have Kavhem Tzoi is Das, Tiferes, and Yisoid. Kavhem Tzoi, the middle column, which always represents integration, synthesis between the right and the left. It's different personalities. You have personalities that are right-oriented, extroverted. Left-oriented, introverted. Left is always introverted. Right is projection, extroverted. Tiferes is not about extroverted or introverted. It's a different reality. Because between extroverted and introverted, it's a hard balance. Some people love being with people. They become alive at bar mitzvahs. They become alive at kiddushim. When you put them alone in a room, they turn into pumpkins. Other people, you put them between people, they turn into pumpkins. You give them solitary confinement, and they come to life. They have tchiyas hamesim. They're creative. They think. They're interesting. Right? They have to meet somebody, or this, they already almost, we call the Chevra Kadisha. Emotionally, it's very problematic. It's a clash. Are you out there or are you in here? Avram and Yitzchak were opposite personalities. Tiferes is not Chesed and not Gvura. It's not a little bit of both. You see from here, Tiferes is not, a compromiser. A little this, a little that, a little that, a little that. They say about one of the Israeli prime ministers that he was spineless and he couldn't say anything. He couldn't say anything decisive. So they once asked him, "Do you like tea or coffee?" He says, "Half tea, half coffee." Tiferes is not pshat half tea, half coffee. It's a different creature. The Gemara says, "Koi is nishke chaya, nishke behema." It's a different creature. It has elements of this and elements of this. It's a different creature. What's this creature? It's called Tiferes. It's the midah of Yaakov. What is it? What is it? So here he says it's the Ein Sof, it's Shem Havaya. The Keli is Havaya. What does this mean, the Keli is Havaya? And the other ones, the Keli is not Havaya. So I'm going to explain it based on, the Baal HaTanya speaks about this in quite a few places, and the other Rebbes of Chabad explain it also at length in their Maimarim of Chassidus. So I'm going to bring up one point that they make. It's a very subtle and a very profound point. What is beauty? Chesed we call love, giving. Chesed, kindness. Everyone understands what that means on some level. Gvura we can also understand. Strength, sternness, discipline, boundaries, firmness, penalties. Midas hadin, midas hagvura, which is not bad. Sometimes it's crucial. It's vital. It's helpful, right? Huh? It could be bad, of course. You have Esav and you have Yitzchak. And one is Kedusha, one is not Kedusha. But the concept is strength, firmness, quid per quo, midah keneged midah, etc. Chesed is much more tolerant. You see the good in everything. What's this creature called Tiferes, beauty? Like suddenly the names change. Chesed and Gvura are obvious emotions. I'm attracted to you. I reject you. I love you. I'm having issues with you. I want to be close to you. I need borders with you. We understand that. Sometimes borders are very healthy. They're very good. But it's a time of withdrawal. It's a time of withdrawal. Sometimes you give in to your child. Sometimes you have to say no. Sometimes you say yes. And sometimes you say no. And if you don't know how to say no, as the experts say, you also don't know how to say yes. Because if the only reason you say yes is because you don't know how to say no, so then you're not saying yes, you just don't know how to say no. But if you know how to say no, then when you say yes, the yes is a yes, because the no is a no. Okay, I hope that made sense.
You said Gevura could be bad, so Chesed can be bad.
Of course, Chesed. You give when you shouldn't be giving. You give in when you shouldn't be giving in. You tolerate things that should not be tolerated. You tolerate injustice, you tolerate bigotry, you tolerate criminal activity, you tolerate abusive behavior in the name of chesed. That's not good. That's very bad. You spoil somebody in a way that they can't become a human being and so forth. So what's this concept called Tiferes, and how does it become number 3, beauty? And yet Yaakov can't be the first. If you don't have Avram and Yitzchak, you can't get to Yaakov. You first have to have the first 2 to get to Tiferes. Because you can't really access Tiferes. You can't skip. You need Chesed, you need Gvura, you need Tiferes. Yaakov could have been the first. Doesn't work that way. It's the Shleimus, but Shleimus doesn't mean this is it. Shleimus means everything is a process. In this process, it represents something special. There's Milus and Chesed, there's Milus and Gvura. So for this, we have to understand a little bit what beauty is. So we all know the lovely expressions, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Al tam v'reach en litvakeach. You're going to argue if falafel is good or horrible. You can argue if vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream. Okay, shine. Beauty, what's beautiful? Yeah, you think this is beautiful, and then I think it's ugly as the devil. Shine. The Gemara in Ksuvas, Beis Shammai says kala kamoishi, and Beis Hillel says kala nova chasud, and Beis Shammai says what if not? What if it's not a kalana? And Beis Hillel says, yeah, when your wife goes and buys something min hashuk and you think it's horrible, don't say it. Say it's beautiful, it's nova chasud. Don't say it. How do you teach Beis Hillel? Okay, I mean, we discussed it once by Riches, what's the shit of Beis Hillel, Ketzad Merakten, we learned in the Torah. So is there something called beauty? What you look at this, you say, wow, this is a beautiful body. This is a beautiful painting. This is a beautiful house. It's a beautiful face. Yeah? It's a beautiful sefer, a beautiful table, a beautiful stender. I don't mean this table. It's also beautiful, but there's levels. What is there an uptight to beauty? Is there a geder hagdara to beauty? In other words, there's no hagdara. But the Baal HaTanya did give a hagdara. The Baal HaTanya gave a hagdara to beauty. The hagdara was that there's no hagdara, you'll hear in a moment. But there's a hagdara. There's a hagdara to beauty. And the reason he wants to give hagdara to beauty is so a person should be able to understand the rhythm, the beat that beauty represents. What really makes something beautiful? What makes something? So he often says a lashon that Tiferes doesn't come from one color. Every artist knows you don't just take one color, one pigment, and you make a painting. It's the combination of many colors. Which is why Tiferes is the synthesis of Chesed and Gvura. All beauty comes from synthesis. He's going to say so. Tiferes comes from his skalalus. One color is not beautiful. A few colors together, as they converge, the symmetrical quality, different components converging together make something beautiful. Music. An instrument is beautiful. But when you have a symphony, right? You ever saw 600 instruments, 600 musicians playing together? There's a resonance that can melt your heart if they know what they're doing, of course. It's a different level. This is Tiferes. Chesed is not beautiful. It's powerful, but not beautiful. Gvura is not beautiful. It's powerful, but not beautiful. Tiferes is beautiful. Why? Because it combines two opposite colors. red and blue. In other words, Gvura, which is red, and Chesed, which is usually blue or sometimes white, usually blue. It combines the colors. That's what creates art. And we see this, things that are beautiful is when the artist, the builder, the architect, the creator, what's called a beautiful paragraph. You ever read? Today, sometimes in our literature, people don't care anymore about diction, grammar, eloquence, definitions. You read an article and you say, this was beautifully written. You read a book and you say, this is a classic. You listen to a speech, you say, it's like, what makes it? So there's the teichen, but I'm talking now about the words. If a person keeps on repeating the same adjectives, the same words, no. It's the ability, art is the ability to bring together different expressions, different words, and they converge to create a sentence, a paragraph, a chapter, a book, an essay, a speech, and you can sense beauty in it.
Complexity.
Huh?
Complexity.
The word sing, there's a song.
But not complexity in and of itself, rather the synthesis of various distinct forces. That's step one. But really it goes one step deeper. And that is, Baal HaTanya says, beauty is whenever there is bittul hachomer el hatzura. Whenever there's bittul hachomer el hatzura, the brute superficial reality yields to the inner soul of the reality, you look at it and you say beautiful. I'll give a very simple example. Take a table. What makes one table beautiful and another table not beautiful? So you'll say, well, the type of wood, the type of moldings, the type of designs. Okay, so if this table, let's imagine it's mahogany, cedar, with moldings and designs, right? Or whatever it is, a chair, a beautiful chair. A beautiful body even, a beautiful physique. Yefei toyar, v'yefei marer, that's the Chumash often says. What is it? What is it that makes it? Why do I say beautiful? The answer is al pi soid. Everything in the world has a chomer and has a tzura. Chomer is the physical reality or the brute reality. Tzura is the purpose, the function, the meaning, the objective. When you look at somebody, at something, you could see the chomer. Chomer is just the brute reality, what it is. Tzura is the story it tells, the story it wants to tell. What's the meaning of it? What's the purpose? What was in the mind of the person who created it? What is its objective? What is its goal? The Rambam says Tzura is always the neshama of something, the content, the inner design, the inner purpose. But Tzura also means the form of it. When the form of something conveys its functionality, it elevates the object from brute physicality into something that points to the spiritual, to the transcendent. A cheer that is designed in a way that brings out what a cheer is, that is the chomer yield to the tzura. The chomer says, I'm telling a story. I'm bringing out a message. When you have a body that's symmetrical and every limb, every organ, right, is designed in a way that it captures the uniqueness of this organ, the uniqueness of this limb, both in terms of itself, in terms of a face, and also its symmetry with the other limbs and organs. It tells the story of what a guf is, a story of life, a story of a healthy life, of a powerful life, of a soul that's fully alive in the body. When you think about it, a great piece of art, it could be a simple picture that we see every day. But the artist brought out the full drama, the full depth of the story. It's not just canvas with colors. The greater artist is with the soul that's in it, the neshama that's in it, it's the tzura that's in it. And anything, you say it's a beautiful home. What makes a beautiful home? You put a lot of gold on the dining room table like some Jews like to do, doesn't make it a beautiful home. It makes it a meshugana house. Okay, before the shechin, what the gold? You mean? There has to be a havana. Havana is the zimmer. This is a dining room. What makes it really beautiful is The dining room comes out, the living room comes out, the bedroom comes out. The same as even with a bed. Everything has beauty. The more its purposefulness is felt, the more we experience beauty in something. We don't go through this cheshbon, we say, this is beautiful. But the truth of the beauty is that the Vayomer is telling a story. There's a vision there. There's a poem that's being said. There's a message that's being conveyed through the design. You're right. The truck is very clear what its purpose is. But what is its purpose? Its purpose is to schlep earth. Its purpose is Vayomer. You understand? Its purpose is Vayomer.
It's a component for
But even in the world of trucks, we all know there are beautiful trucks.
And the purpose of the diamond is to look beautiful.
The purpose of the diamond is
It's
something much more
beautifying object.
abstract. It's to beautify.
It's the beautifying object. It's jewelry.
It's a whole different level of imagination.
even a diamond in the dirt is beautiful.
But I think some people agree, I don't know, maybe not in your world, that some cars are beautiful. They go crazy about them. They go crazy about these cars. It's obsession. It's an addiction. It's a whole expertise about cars. Every car you could see what it does, but it's the car that brings out the car. Now, is this real beauty? Depends on which state of consciousness you are. You know, what is your tzura? What is your purpose?
That's the beholder.
That's the beholder. That's where the beholder is. It's tolui hakol lefi hamavayish v'hamizbayish. Because Tiferes is the bittul of Vayomer to tzura, the bittul of brute matter, the elevation of brute matter, conveying something higher. Therefore, it always, the most beautiful things are things that include synthesis, that bring together opposing objects and they converge into one, as in a painting or in music or in a body, a physique, a beautiful body and so forth. Why? What's the Havana? L'cha'ira, there's a lashon of the Baal HaTanya that one color is not beautiful. Many colors is beautiful. One voice is often not beautiful. The choir of children singing suddenly has a psatam Gan Eden. Yeah. So, I don't mean to ask klotz kasha, but just rhetorically. 0 plus 0 doesn't equal 1. 0 plus 0 equals 0. If 1 is not beautiful, and 2 is not beautiful, 1 is not beautiful, so how together do they become beautiful? The pshat, of course, is, and this is the nekuda they're saying, Hiskalalus brings out another nekuda. I am I and you are you. Two separate realities. My ego is my ego, your ego is my ego. How indeed can we both together create one piece of art? How does the musician, the violinist and the drummer, who are very different types of people, if you know drummers and you know violinists, takes a certain guy to be a drummer, takes a certain guy to be a pianist, or play the cello. And yet here they're working in complete synchronization. So you'll say because they're both getting a paycheck. Emes. But we're talking about artists. Let's understand the Havana here. How does it work? What about a body? The heart and the brain are very different. They work complete unison in a healthy person.
Understands their component.
So the vart is that each one appreciates the fact that it is what it is, but there's also more to my story. For my story to be complete, I need your story. Like in a jigsaw puzzle. Each piece is indispensable to the puzzle, but to create the full picture, I need your piece, and your piece has to be different than my piece. If all the jigsaw puzzles look identical, a picture won't be created. If all the limbs and organs are identical, we know what the body will look like. Won't be able to function. It's the diversity that allows for a bigger picture to emerge. If we would be uniform, if we would be thinking the same way, dressing the same way, operating the same way, then nobody perhaps would be threatened or as threatened. But the bigger picture wouldn't be created. My picture would be replicated again and again and again and again. My picture. The larger picture, I need different pieces, and each piece is unique. Should they clash or not? Depends. If they don't see the bigger picture, they clash. Who are you to be so different than me? This is what happens in so many a marriage, because that's when two people are sitting on each other's head for 24 hours, unless you run to the shiur in the morning.
But the drummer is not 0 alone.
I'm just bringing out the
He
concept.
doesn't sound good alone either.
But Stam, you have a drummer, you know what it's going to sound like. Well, what happens here is, if you don't see the bigger picture, there will be conflict. And conflict resolution then becomes an ego question. I give you this, I give you that, you give me this, you give me this, we compromise. So there shouldn't be violence, it shouldn't be exaggerated. But that's not real hiskalalus. Hiskalalus means I recognize there's a larger picture of which I am a part of. There's a part of the picture that only I can convey through my jigsaw puzzle. But there's a part of the picture that I cannot convey. And I need you to complement me, just like you need me to complement you, and we need each other to complement each other, and then the larger picture is created. The deepest bittul hachaymer al atzura happens in integration, because integration is all about the recognition that my voice is valuable, but it only contains part of the truth. Together with your voice, my instrument together with your instrument, with his instrument, and you get the full resonance of the ballad, of the song, of the symphony, or whatever it is, the full piece of art. So the black, the white, the blue, the red, the yellow in the piece of art, they're not conflicting, even though they're very different colors. Some of them are opposite colors. Why? Because they're all dedicated, they surrender, so to speak, their personal ego to a larger truth. When we look at that, we say, it's beautiful. What made the symphony beautiful? It's not many voices. It's that for many voices to come together, they all had to leave their individual ego and reach a state of transcendence. We now reach the final point. Beauty is associated with deep pleasure. Beauty in the soul, like the Baal HaTanya, it's a soulful experience. From what? From going back to your source. The source is akudim. In akudim, there is no ego. There is simple reality, undefined reality. Because chesed is undefined and gvura is undefined. Why are they undefined? Because they feel the Ein Sof. Whenever you feel that in the world, you say this is beautiful. Where do you see that in the world? Our world is based on fragmentation. Our world is not akudim. Our world is based on you and I. We're not one. We're befedish not one. But whenever you see synthesis, where is synthesis coming from? Synthesis is coming from the recognition that there's a larger picture. The way akudim is experienced in a fragmented world is through synthesis. So this is how the undefined Ein Sof is manifested in our own space. And whenever you get a sense of that, you melt in beauty. That is the experience of beauty. The experience of beauty is that sense, that marvel, a sense of simplicity, of oneness, of cohesiveness, where you feel a vision of the oneness of the world. Now, this doesn't mean every time you see a beautiful table, we start analyzing it this way, obviously. This is giving articulation to how the soul experiences beauty. In other words, you have akudim the way it's in the world of akudim. Akudim in the world of akudim means there's no self. There's no self. But how is Ein Sof translated in the world of brudim? I can't say there's no self. How is it translated? You know how it's translated? It's translated in Shalom Bayis. It's translated in a symphony. It can't be translated in our world by obliterating identity. That's not true. If you try to obliterate identity in this world, you are delusional. That was the problem with socialism. That's the problem with the Doir HaFlaga we'll see. They said, let's go back to akudim. It's a much better life. And they're right. But they're delusional. Because nekudim happened. Nekudim happened. It's not a fiction. In other words, God wanted identity. There's no denying that. And if you don't give that to people, it's going to come back to haunt you. There was no system in the world, not in religion, not in politics, where you suppressed individual thought and expression and it succeeded. It can't succeed because diversity is not a tragedy. Diversity is sewn into the fabric of creation. Was that a nice sentence? What made that sentence beautiful?
It's complexity.
It's integration.
True and concept.
Because sewn, fabric, creation, diversity. Right? And sewing usually doesn't work with diversity. Sewing is what we used to do. Right?
You sewed the words together.
Very good. That's teufer. On Shabbos, that's a malacha. So fabric.
Choice is the same.
Toifer is Miloshen Tiferes. Yosef is a Poiser Chaloimus. You can only interpret dreams if you know how to be Toifer. Because dreams are the subconscious. Okay.
Poiser is Toifer?
Poiser is Toifer, yeah. Poiser and Toifer is the same.
Yosef was also different.
Joseph is the next level. It's Tiferes is Yisait. It's Yisait. So let's be Masakim the Indian here. So in other words, how? I can't deny Nekudim. And that's why socialism really can't work. Why? Because, first of all, practically why? Because the person on the top has so much power that unless he's a tzaddik gomer without a Yetzer Hara, he's going to manipulate it. Right? How are you going to guarantee that the one on top is making sure everything is really equal? You know, some animal, whatever, everybody's equal, but some are more equal than others, right? Orwell. Huh? If it's an elected person, so what? We're soon going to elect a person. So it's going to be Tzaddik Hadar or the Tzaddikas of the generation. The Great America. This is the big America. Sure. So what do we have here? We have a situation that even if you could find a Tzaddik Gomer, but it's another issue. The issue is creativity is unleashed through individuality. That's a divine truth. It's not a human flaw. It's a divine truth. Baal HaTanya believes that the Doir HaFlaga's mistake was they wanted to deny that truth. V'nasa lanu shame. Which shame? Yudkei Vavkei, Akudim. Hashem Echad. Hashem is the one who scatters them. You would think God would want people to be together, not scattered. No, you can't be together if you're not scattered first. If your togetherness is based on suppression, you be in the same room, that's not together. That's coerced. In Akudim, yeah, there's no self. There was no emergence of ego. Once there was an emergence of self, you can't reclaim that world unless you're delusional. So you could be a hippie for a few years and sit all night with your guitar and melt away in oneness. And let's face it, it's much more geschmack than going to work.
Or a nanach.
Huh?
Or a nanach.
Etc. Etc. So these are very valuable human emotions. We want to go back to oneness. And
that's why a guy like Van Gogh was depressed because he
most artists are very, very complicated.
So that's where the hippie is threatening to the establishment?
Of course, we don't like them. Really, they convey a truth that we're not comfortable with. But on the other hand, it's not a sustainable truth. How long can you sit in Woodstock? A long time? This is the whole Nekudah. This is what he's trying to synthesize, the Nigla and the Nister. The whole Nekudah of Brudim. So is it a hopeless world? Is it just a world of capitalism? No. Where do we experience Akudim? We experience Akudim in Hiskalalus. So when you see synthesis, you're not looking at synthesis. You know what you really see? You see Pshittus. You see Ein Sof. You see undefined reality, and that creates beauty. When you see the undefined, that because the soul is looking for the undefined. We don't like defined reality, really. You see, deep people don't like defined reality. It's very hard, because defined reality is really a compromise of truth, because truth is one, Einaid Movada. But could you live in that world? So the way it's translated into our world is through Hiskalalus. When you see Hiskalalus, what you're really seeing is Ein Sof manifested in a world of fragmentation, where I and you see the bigger picture. What's the bigger picture? Ein Sof. And therefore, I create space for you, create space for me. That's the secret of marriage. That's the secret of the minyan. That's the whole concept. So, B'meila, come back now to the Vart. In all the other names, Gvura is also Ein Sof. But what's the uptouch of Gvura? The uptouch of Gvura is Gvura. The uptouch of Gvura is Gvura. The uptouch of Chesed is Chesed. What's the uptouch of Tiferes? The uptouch of Tiferes is integration, beauty. So therefore, the Keli of Tiferes is also Yud Kei Vav Kei. The articulated element of Tiferes is also Akudim. It's also Ein Sof. It's also Pshittus. That's why Yaakov is the one who accesses Akudim and Akudim and Brudim. This was the uniqueness of Yaakov. That's why Mitasei Shlema. Because from Chesed or Gvura, you're not going to have beauty. You will have fallout. Yishmael will have a fallout. And Yitzchak will have fallout Esav. Yaakov, none of his children will become OTD. This is basically the OTD story. Why not? Because Yaakov never gives up on any child. Why does Yaakov not give up on his child? Because Tiferes never excludes, ever. Tiferes he associates with emes. Emes is aleph, mem, taf. Truth pervades from the beginning, the middle, and the end. The power of midas ha'emes is that it always could find the nekuda of emes in that space. Because it could find the nekuda of emes in that space, it never gets stuck in its own identity. Whenever you get stuck, I know it's late, but I have to tell you a story that somebody sent me yesterday. There was a Yid, Rabbi Yaakov Naiman from Petach Tikva. He was a big Rosh Yeshiva there. Rabbi Yaakov Naiman. And he had a yeshiva. It was a very Hasidic yeshiva. And they told him that there's a boy who goes to the theaters. In that yeshiva, going to the theater would be like, I don't know, some yeshivas going to the theaters is almost part of Seder, but this yeshiva going to the theater, person will intermarry. Huh? Like avodah zarah or worse. So they told him this boy is going to the theaters, he's going constantly. So they came to him to tell him. So he says, tell me the next time he skips out of the dormitory, let me know. So they did. And he gets into his car and he drives there to the theater. It was a winter night in Eretz Yisrael, and Rabbi Yaakov Naiman was lurking behind wherever he was, waiting for him. The boy arrives, however he came, I don't know, he came a taxi, whatever he had, the bus, and he's about to go in, and who's there? The older Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Yaakov Naiman, shows up. Gechapt, shacher al gabelav, and there's nothing to say, he's right there going into the theater. He's like, he becomes, you ever caught by your principal? You remember the feeling when you're 14 years old? 16, faglivert, right? He's congealed, he's frozen. Nothing to say, my Bubba died, my Alter Rebbe died, there was a third world war, Trump won, whatever. What is he going to say? So Rabbi Yaakov Naiman looks at him, they look at each other, and he's expecting, Yaakov Naiman looks at him and says, I don't understand. It's winter. How do you not wear a coat? How do you come here without a coat? You're going to get a cold. I don't understand you. I'm walking here and I see my Talmud without a coat. So you know what? Wherever you're going, enjoy yourself. I'm giving you my coat. Take my coat. I'm anyway on the way home. I was just here for another reason. I'm going in a taxi. The way home. You need a coat probably. Do whatever you want to do. Enjoy. Whenever you come home to yeshiva, just put the coat in my office. And he walks away. He walks away. The Yid says he went to the theater. And he's sitting at the theater. He says, aber der Mantel hat mir so ungewarmt. He said, I couldn't even concentrate on the theater. It's mir so ungewarmt. He takes off his coat. He says, do what you want to do, but take a coat. I don't want you to get cold. And he says, the mantle, that coat brought me back to Yiddishkeit. Okay. What does this come from? Why can't people do this? They say, because I'm frum. How can I tolerate not frum behavior? Yeah? This comes either from cluelessness or from egotism. I can't get out of my model. You don't fit into, I can't get into your head. If you can get into somebody else's mind, what did he do? He could have screamed at him, he could have thrown him out of yeshiva. He could have done that. Everybody does that. Every yeshiva does that constantly. Right? What did he do? He went into the space of that child. So he picked him up. That's what emes is. Emes doesn't mean you compromise. Emes is you not stuck in your own ego, in your own expectations of who your child is supposed to be. You tune in to that reality. It's a moment of synthesis. Emes is synthesis. Whenever you have synthesis, what do you have? Ein Sof. When you have Ein Sof, you have undefined reality. Undefined reality, when we sense undefined reality, we sense beauty in the world. Even a beautiful table, a beautiful picture. What are you seeing? You're seeing Ein Sof. The way it's translated and restricted in a picture. But it's always that Nakuda.
This class is brought to you by theyeshiva.net. Please help us continue the classes. Make even a small contribution at www.theyeshiva.net/donate.